an act of patriotism.
Let me, Maggie, I mean, you talk to people who normally leak information. I don't know if you can say, what do you find to be people's motivation?
I really try not to talk about sourcing in any direction because I don't want to give people a thread to pull on here in that regard. But I do think that it is difficult for this president to talk about, look, President Obama, and again, I don't like when people do, but President Obama, but I do think it is worth remembering that President Obama did criminalize leaks too, so it's not like this is a new thing. The way this president has talked about it is very different in that respect, including supposedly having discussed it with Comey, the head of the FBI, whether this was doable, to jail reporters. I think that this president got elected in part because of the revelations from WikiLeaks, which were someone's personal stolen property, and he would read them aloud at rallies, and he would say, "I love WikiLeaks." It's, I think, very hard to then say WikiLeaks is a site that has been revealing secrets about how the CIA does its business. So I don't know how you can say, and I don't think the president has commented on that at all, but he has talked about everything about himself.
Steve, I mean, you know how the Russians work. This is what they want. They train spies to build relationships like this. Does it surprise you that the Russians were apparently bragging about a relationship with General Flynn? And again, to Senator Santorum's point, you know, it's very easy to look at this and say, well, look, these are, you know, maybe these Russians are just lying to each other and building themselves up by saying they have more of a relationship than they did.
To start for the record, I consider myself a patriotic American, and I think the president has brought this on himself. The leaks, you know, have always been here, and the Russians have always talked about it. Really, for the Russian perspective, I think this is a win-win-win situation. I mean, the more we talk about impeachment, the Russians view that as essentially, you know, maybe there's something that they can do to help that version of regime change, which is something that they accuse us of all the time. If the president never gets as far as impeachment because the investigation doesn't bear it out, that's perhaps a win for them too, because then we can get back to the Trump that they knew during the campaign, who was talking about the lifting of sanctions and who was talking about, you know, it doesn't matter about Crimea. So that's a win for them too. And here's the last big win for them, which is something that we forget sometimes, which is how our allies, and particularly our NATO and Western allies, see all of this. They see us talking about things like impeachment. They see us, you know, wrapped around the axle about leaks, which frankly have been around in this town for, you know, God knows how long. And the Russians see that as a wedge, and they're all about dividing and conquering. And so really there's very few scenarios right now that the Russians don't actually get something out of this, whether it's talking about leaks, impeachment, or the discomfort that our Western allies have to feel right now. I mean, imagine you're Angela Merkel right now looking at the picture book that the White House gave you with your visit with the president, and then imagine the old boys backslapping in the Oval Office, except this time it's with the Russians. So it's really a win-win-win for the Russians across the boards, I think.
We got to take a quick